Today I want to talk with you about The Trade, a contemporary romance novel by Megan Quinn that was published in 2020. This novel is a fourth book in the Brentwood Boys series, but can be easily read as a standalone. As per usual, we will start this video with a short synopsis, then proceed to the non-spoiler review, and wrap this video up with the spoilers. If you haven't read The Trade yet, then do not worry. I will make sure to let you know when the spoilers begin. So, in this novel we follow Corey, a professional baseball player whose life just blew into pieces as his beloved team made the irrational decision of trading him to a different team. This sudden change leaves Corey without the security of his well-established life and forces him to work with a team he is not really fond of, as well as it pushes him into a position where he once again needs to put an effort into establishing his reputation and earn the love of this new team's fans. A task that seems way harder than it should be. In the midst of all these changes, Corey runs into his dream woman, Natalie, someone he feels instant connection with and someone who makes him seriously rethink his no dating while playing baseball stance. The only problem holding Corey back from making the move is that Natalie is unfortunately married. I think that it would be accurate for me to say that I always had a bit of a complicated relationship with Megan Quinn. Her books are very simplistic. I feel like everyone has a different definition for the specific genre of books, but I personally like to call them popcorn. They're a fun little snack that will help you to reduce my hunger for a bit, but they are very far from a full, satisfying meal. And there's nothing wrong with that. I myself love them. I'm just saying that they are the reality TV of publishing world. Quickly produced, formulaic, and perfect for shutting your brain off and relaxing. They are simply entertaining. As soon as I see a book written by Elsie Silver, Lucy Score, Liz Tamfordy, and many more, I end up buying it without even reading the synopsis because I know that I will enjoy them. They will be exactly what I expect them to be. Yet when it comes to Megan Quinn, it feels a bit like a lottery. I might get an average yet fun enough read, or I might end up with something barely consumable. So why do I keep on picking up her books, you may ask? Well, because of this. I have read That Forever Girl a couple of years ago, and it was absolute magic. It was still a popcorn, don't get me wrong, but it was heartfelt and romantic. The characters felt real, the chemistry between the leads was great, and once I finished it, I couldn't help myself but put the notebook on for the 100th time. Consequently, since that day, I continued to pick up Megan Quinn's books, hoping that That Forever Girl wasn't a fluke, and I will eventually find another novel that will recreate this magic. But now, after reading an excessive amount of her books, and after somewhat pushing through The Trade, I think I might actually be ready to let this idea go. That being said, let's talk about The Trade. Now, the initial idea of the novel is kind of interesting. At least it was interesting enough to raise my curiosity. You don't often get romances where one of the leads is currently in a serious relationship, for obvious reasons. Yet this biggest problem introduced in the book synopsis is hardly even a problem. Nothing really is. And yet the protagonists still constantly stumble over their feet, portraying themselves as unlikable or immature, and the book as a whole pointless. I was painting the walls of a bedroom when I finished listening to a wonderful book by Rebecca Yarros, and I obviously needed the audio entertainment to proceed with my chores, so I clicked on The Trade. And honestly, I wanted to give this book the benefit of the doubt, even when I noticed it's steering away from this initial course. I even got a little bit intrigued because I wanted to know where the story would take me. That is, until I reached the half point of the book and started to seriously doubt that the author herself knew where the story should go. I don't often say that, but The Trade felt like a drag. The characters hardly felt like actual human beings, the plot lines were absolutely illogical, and the more I listened, the more frustrated I got for wasting my time on something that felt like a bad draft of a decent idea and not an actual novel. The trade felt like a contractual obligation to fulfill a set up quota, a filler, something the author needed to deliver her publishers on time. It didn't feel like Meghan Quinn wanted to write this book, and these people, because she was burning with the excitement to tell their story, but because it was the next step in the series that people wanted to read. I know it sounds rather harsh, but I will always take a badly written book which feels genuine over a decently well-written one that feels like the only reason for its existence is a paycheck. I find it so hard to actually talk about this book because there's nothing to talk about. The plot is a combination of several events that happen to the protagonist out of blue and could be easily avoided with a simple conversation. And the protagonists themselves are so painfully one-dimensional, so shallow that I wouldn't be surprised if, in order to put them to paper, Meghan Quinn sat down, wrote down their names and bullet points for 3 character traits or the issues they will face. There's no depth there, even when the story hits some actually difficult topics, like never-ending media bullying or mental health issues. I found it hard to take it seriously because I couldn't find it in me to empathize with Corey and Natalie, because these people felt like caricatures of people and not actual human beings. And the cringiness of it all, there's just something inherently uncomfortable for me as a 31-year-old reading about men in their mid-30s communicating with each other as if they were fresh out of high school. And I'm not talking about a fun, relatable, forever young kind of way. I'm talking about an insufferable sitcom this would never fly in the real life kind of way. It weirdly feels like the author tries to push the found family trope forward. Like she tries so hard to portray these men as great and understanding and so very open with each other and their individual problems. She tries to create men who are feminists and open-minded and always involved in each other's lives to a point where it all starts to feel disingenuous and consequently annoying. Now, all of this is not to say that Meghan Quinn is a bad author. As I have mentioned before, I have read plenty of her books and I found some of them interesting and entertaining enough to be classified as a quick palate cleanser. The Trade is just not one of those books. That being said, let's move to the spoiler review so we could talk more about the biggest issue of this novel. I think that I have already mentioned all the little things that I personally find incredibly annoying, yet they are not the reason that pushed me into making this review. All these character exaggerations, while annoying to me, are what I assume Meghan Quinn is known and liked for by many. My biggest issue with this novel in particular, that thing that forced me to stop doing whatever I was doing at the time, grab my phone and rant into my audio recorder app instead, is that this book is the embodiment of one of the worst tropes ever put to paper. The Trade is built on the back of miscommunication. Take away all the plot progression that is driven by this trope and you won't have any book left. So, if you have read this novel and haven't noticed the amount of time we ran into this plot device, first of all, I have to say that I envy you. I'm sure you had a much more pleasurable reading experience than I've had. And secondly, I invite you to join me on this journey where we look at the most absurd instances, so where the miscommunication trope come into play. As soon as Natalie and Corey meet, Corey looks at her with the biggest hard eyes on his face. And what's not to like? Natalie's funny, smart, beautiful, the whole package. She is someone who makes Corey rethink his stance on relationships practically as soon as she opens her mouth. And yet, she's married. Well, divorced, as you know, and I know, and Natalie knows. Though I assume her husband wasn't in the loop about it, as he has introduced himself to Corey's sister as Natalie's husband, who for some reason was still invited to this charity event, despite cheating on Natalie, who is in charge of this whole organization. But you know what? Let's let that slide. We needed something to happen to kick off this miscommunication domino effect. So yeah, Corey is as good as in love with a married woman, whom he obviously can't pursue because he's not a homewrecker, which is all good and understandable. And to be honest, once we learned about Natalie being married, for a moment I did believe that she was indeed married. A naive person that I am, I even thought that maybe we will get a novel that will take its time to look deeper into a marriage that simply ran its course. That we will find Natalie having to make a difficult decision and end the relationship that doesn't make her happy anymore. As well as we will get to see Corey facing a moral dilemma of wanting someone who is not available. But instead, we were asked to believe that Natalie got divorced in secret. And that's why absolutely no one in their friend group knows that she's not with her husband anymore. In addition to that, I assume that her friends hated her husband to begin with, and that's why nobody ever even bothered to ask why he doesn't attend important shared events anymore. Now, of course, I'm being sarcastic here, but I hate having to waste 100 pages on a miscommunication issue that could be easily solved by Corey friendly asking Natalie on New Year's Eve, "So is your husband joining us tonight?" It's not a rude question. It's a question anyone with a partner would expect to receive after showing up at an important event without said partner. Which is confirmed further on when Corey finally asks Natalie if her husband doesn't mind them sharing a room during the vacation. But of course, before we even have a possibility to clear up this little marriage misunderstanding, we are introduced to a different one. AKA, our protagonists are being invited to the same holiday with the same group of people without knowing that the other one is coming too. And while I do realize that this is just another way the author propels the story forward, the lack of logic behind this accident is kind of annoying. I mean, we are talking about a close group of friends that consists of, correct me if I'm wrong, 3 couples. 4 maybe. Out of which 2 people are siblings of our protagonists and 2 are the significant others of the siblings of our protagonist, who I assume are in the loop of what is going on, and yet not one person thought that it would be smart to mention to the rest of the group that they invited someone else to join their thoroughly planned vacation. Well, that's just rude. And also rather unbelievable taking into consideration that both Natalie and Corey received their itineraries for this trip. In my personal opinion, it would have been much more fun if the rest of the group would have noticed this double booking beforehand and purposefully decided to play the matchmakers. But that's just me. Obviously, the author's heart was set on delivering the maximum amount of miscommunication storylines possible. So yeah, even though the story hasn't even had a chance to pick up pace yet, we are already blessed with 3 irrational situations that could have been solved with a 30-second conversation. But that's not where all this fun ends. We continue this streak by having Natalie mention that she's currently looking for a fling, which gives us another wonderful sequence of Natalie and Corey not being able to communicate as adults. So you see, Natalie never actually wanted a fling. She was told by her friend that this is what she should want after being in a very serious relationship for half of her life. And she likes Corey. She would be in a relationship with him, no questions asked, if given a chance. And Corey likes Natalie so much that being a rebound would never suffice. So instead, he decides to torture himself every single night and just pretend that everything is damn peachy. And yes, sure, let's say in the beginning of this vacation, Natalie feels like she has no chance with a man like Corey, and Corey is genuinely certain that Natalie doesn't want him for anything more than a good time, and I could let that slide. But not after that last night, when the things finally started moving forward and they somewhat hooked up, and Corey, a man in his mid-30s, I might add, makes out with Natalie, goes down on her, and then instantly runs away to the shower to proceed taking care of his own business, if you know what I mean. And please, do not come at me and say that Corey has never been in a relationship before, so he doesn't know how he should or shouldn't behave. Leaving someone the second you stop being intimate without as much as a quick check-in shows a lack of basic human decency. And when he leaves the bathroom and finds Natalie crying, he showers her with compliments, and yet somehow this grown-ass man doesn't manage to find the words to tell her that he's simply not interested in casual sex, which is an absolutely normal thing to say to another human being who you know for a fact wants to be intimate with you. Even if Corey isn't ready to let Natalie know how he really feels about her, he can still let her know where he stands without turning this into a problem. But then again, if they start talking, the author will not have a story to tell. So instead, they sleep through the night, they continue their morning with some form of dry humping. Well, you know what happened. You read the book yourself. Don't make me say it. Afterwards, they fly back home, and being the stand-up gentleman that Corey is, he just ignores Natalie the whole flight and then bails on the rest of the group as soon as the plane lands. Which leads us to probably the one and only time in this novel where a character behaves logically and demands to hear an explanation for Corey's shitty behavior. My happiness was short-lived, however, as right after Natalie confronts Corey and successfully manages to pull all of the answers out of him, she decides to prolong my misery by not saying a word and eventually leaving to the hallway, consequently making Corey to believe that she is simply not into him. Because we obviously need at least a few more pages of drama before we can put this little plotline to rest. I swear to God, if you remove the amount of pages we wasted on miscommunication in this novel, we will be left with a third of a book. Anyhow, finally both of them get their shit together, profess their growing feelings, and decide to give this relationship a fair shot. Now at this point, I was already very frustrated, yet still somewhat curious to see where this novel will go. To my annoyance though, soon enough I realized that this book is not really going anywhere. Corey is having issues as he is not able to click with his new team, as well as he gets constantly harassed by paparazzi and team's fans. So he behaves like any other adult in a loving relationship and decides not to confide any of his fears and worries to his partner, whom he clearly cares about. Which leads to Natalie not understanding the extent of the situation and ignoring Corey's wishes to not come to his training, or game, or something. If I'm honest with you, at this point I was already halfway checked out from the story. Though not checked out enough to not realize that Natalie ignoring Corey's boundaries and showing up after he specifically asked her not to show up was a ridiculous decision on her part. Just as ignorant as not understanding why Corey is upset with her blatantly ignoring his wishes. But we need more drama, so Natalie does this irrational thing, which leaves Corey to do a full 180 and tell her that he needs a break from their relationship. Despite just recently going on a full-on rant of how this is going to be a serious relationship and that if she is not ready to be in it 100%, then he's not interested in starting anything either, because it's all or nothing. It's them against the world. So they obviously break up, even though they could have both just cooled off a little and have a quick conversation a few days later about where they actually stand and where their heads are at and what they expect from this. But this is Megan Quinn, not Abby Jimenez, so we can't actually let adults behave like adults. On a side note, check out yours truly if you haven't yet. Wonderful book. A big portion of it also relies on the main couple misunderstanding each other's intentions, yet it feels so real and so heartbreakingly romantic. If you are into a fluffy romance, it is an absolute must for you. But yeah, back to the trade. So everything went to shit, right? Natalie's lonely and unhappy. Corey's literally depressed and unable to cope with his mental health issues. And this is where the last miscommunication tidbit comes in. Natalie and Corey meet up at an event, and when Corey decides to finally let Natalie know that he has been an asshole and he just wants her back, The guy she went on a date once during vacation shows up and proclaims Natalie to be his girl. So Corey gets upset, jumps to his own conclusions again, and the story continues for a little while where we get to follow two grown-ups who want to be together but stubbornly refuse to talk to one another. Now, I could understand and maybe even justify this behavior if we would be following high schoolers, or at least people in their early 20s who are trying to find themselves and who are trying to understand how to navigate their first relationships, as they do lack basic life experience, and often self-confidence to know any better comes with years. But once again, Corey is in his mid-30s. If I was Natalie, I would be concerned with his inability to express himself much more than impressed with his performance in bed. I mean, seriously, what the hell did I just read? Truth be told, I think that after this gem, I will be putting Meghan Quinn on my back burner for a long while. The trade was painful to read, and I'm simply not ready to take a chance on her again. But that's just my opinion. What about yours?